First of all, Ram, I would like to welcome you to the show which we are calling it Next Story, and this segment focuses on personal next. So probably I can take a couple of minutes sharing with you where did this idea come from and why are we doing it, right?
A year ago.
Yeah. You know, I looked around IT services industry. I mean, I happened to head one of the IT services company of India, and so-called seventh largest out of India. And I looked around and I saw tremendous success behind the entire industry for the last 20-25 years. And here is a buzzword which is making round called digital, right? And initially I thought, oh, is this one more fad? Because this industry has solved world hunger 6 times over in some ways. And then I realized it's a very potent force.
Right.
Because when you look at autonomous cars, 3D printers, digital cash, many things which used to be physical are getting converted into digital. Internet of Things, cognitive computing, all these put together, they are going to redefine the boundaries of industries, how value is created, how things are consumed. So I started feeling completely uncomfortable with the quantum of change which is confronting IT services industry.
Right.
And I also saw that it is confronting all other industries, almost all the professions other than even to some extent agriculture, right? Because you can see autonomous tractors in the field soon, right? Or IoT, which is determining how much water to be given or whatever. So I said, then what do I do for my company? Am I the right CEO for this company, or should I give way to somebody younger because digital natives seem to be holding the sway, or should I change myself, or should I hire someone whom I say you go and change and I remain the same old person? And I came to a conclusion that, I'm too young to retire and I have to change myself.
Right.
And started looking for tools to change myself. And then I started speaking to various senior leaders, and I realized that very rarely senior people who have been kind of made it because of their prior success, they pause and undertake a journey of self-transformation.
Right.
And so I started reading books, talking to various folks from different fields.
Right.
And that brought me to this stage. I said, we don't have to learn from just business people, not just IT services people. We can learn from creative people. We can learn from sports people. We can learn from business people, various fields. And then I started doing a bit of research on people who have kind of demonstrated that they have changed, kept pace with the changes, and remain experimented, failed, and yet they have kept pace with the success.
Right.
And that's why I was very, very keen to listen to your story of what you have gone through, how you have kept yourself relevant with change, because the field that you're in, where you have been tremendously successful, number of awards, you have moved, you have got advertising, you have content, you have done movies, and international recognition has come to India through you or your company. So how have you kind of gone through this? How do you deal with change? How do you keep yourself relevant? Do you undertake the journey of introspection and self-transformation? And if so, what have you done in that space?
So, I think that it arises from one feeling, fear. Fear. I'm just scared of being a has-been. I think one of the greatest problems, and I've seen so many people who are living off their reputations. I'm going to tell you a joke for a minute. I'll tell you a joke. You don't have to use it, but I'll just tell you a joke, which is, there's a guy who buys a new Mercedes-Benz, and he's very happy with it, and then after 7 days it stalls. So he says, what's happening over here, So he opens his bonnet and he realizes there's no engine. Okay. So he calls up 1-800 and he says, my car has been moving without an engine. What's happening over here, So they send down a helicopter. The helicopter comes, the engine is lowered, and the engine is put in the bonnet. And he says, but guys, my car has been running for the last 7 days without an engine. What's happening over here? He says, sir, for the first 7 days, our car runs on reputation. So, now, how long are you going to run on reputation? And a lot of people are running on past glory. A lot of the time I feel, like right now what is facing certainly the filmmaking world is VR, virtual reality. And I'm already scared. So in the last week, obviously I had been reading about it, I've been experiencing it, I've looked at the New York Times site, I've been everywhere to see what it's about. But for a long time, I'm now scared that if I don't start making VR films now, I am part of the senior generation. I don't know, I'm not with it, I don't know. And as somebody who is out here to, I think what happens is that you have to understand, why is it that you are doing what you're doing? So, if I say that I make films, obviously the cliche word is I make films because I want to tell stories, and that's become such a, a word that is now, just wallpaper. What's your story? What's the company's story? And I'm here actually on a journey of self-discovery. Right. And as soon as you say to yourself that what is your job? And if your job is self-discovery, then there is no other option but for you to embrace everything that leads to that self-discovery, whether it is then going to be out of curiosity, fear, or just plain old, not wanting to, die. And I think creative death is something which I'm extremely worried about, creative death. And I have had too many people in my, close to me who I've seen are living off their past glories, who are living off their reputations. And I'd rather put myself out there and say that I don't know. And in everything that is hitting us today, on whether it's Pokemon Go, okay, which right. Suddenly you're saying, oh, can I, you are not the person using it. You're saying, can I have a look at it? What is it? But at a certain point, you were the person saying, there were people asking you. Now you're asking other people. Okay. So I think therefore, I just want to, eventually, get out there. And so a reinvention is is coming straight out of being scared. There's no other way to do it. You have to get out there and just say, if I don't reinvent, I'm going to die. Whether you're a company or a human being or a person or whatever, if you don't embrace all this, you're going to die.
Actually, Ram, it's fascinating because I have been speaking to various folks, and while they have expressed their point of view differently, but this is the first time I'm listening to something which is very inner to a person and how you deal with it. Now, you mentioned this Pokemon Go and how you have to learn from others. Maybe you can share with us, because one of the so-called jargons which is making rounds is reverse mentorship. Right.
I know from co-mentoring, we've now become reverse mentoring.
That's right.
Yeah. So I was just getting used to being co-mentor because I think that what happens is that this is an age where guruhood rests not so well on our shoulders. There was a generation before us, and people that we learned from, who somehow they donned the mantle of being gurus easier. Mm-hmm. There was either a fiefdom, or there was a zamindariness, or there was a aristocracy about it, or it was just that generation that said that you basically bowed down to. And then you also became, in a way, a mirror of that person. And then this generation, I think, certainly I'm extremely worried about other people becoming a mirror of me. And I keep telling people who are working with me, at a certain point, I used to dress like my guru. I used to talk like him, I used to sound like him. His name is Ghosh, and he used to run my company, and then now he's chairman. And so I'm now very wary of other people talking like me, behaving like me. I don't want to do that. And the word, by the way, as an aside, the word guru comes from two root words in Sanskrit, gu and ru, which is basically darkness and light. So anybody who takes you from darkness to light, and therefore I like the word reverse mentoring, because it is not necessarily somebody who is your guru who is going to take you, anybody who takes you from darkness to light. And this is happening to us every day, whether I'm presuming that somebody who is now going to show me Pokemon Go in that small moment is my reverse mentor, is in fact somebody who's taking me from darkness to light on what Pokemon Go is doing. And and this process of, it is not me out there as the fount of knowledge saying, okay, everybody listen to me, but it's actually me out there, and this is what we are both doing right now, which is we're out there learning. And so everybody says, but you're now at a stage in your life where you can be a teacher. And I said, please don't do this to me, because it means that you're stopping me from learning. I don't want to be a learner. I don't want to be a teacher. I want to be a learner.
But don't you believe that the best teachers are fantastic learners themselves?
Yes, but the problem is that after a certain point, like that seems to be such a huge responsibility to be a teacher. Is it not something that should happen? Like sometimes I feel that like in the Guru Shishya Parampara, which is something which the Guru Shishya tradition, which is part of Indian classical music, let's say, and it comes from a culture that is 2,000 years old, or even older than that, and from the oral tradition, which comes from, in a way, osmosis. You come, you sit, we talk, and I'll pass it on. Okay. And I feel sometimes that in my profession, for instance, which is, let's say, 100 years old, filmmaking, or advertising, which is perhaps 50, 60, 80 years old, we don't yet have this process of Guru Shishya kind of passing on of knowledge. And I'm a little in two minds about, on one hand, I miss it that we don't have that. On the other hand, I presume, like I'm saying, that today's world today's people don't want to be gurus. The generation before us wanted to be gurus. Today we don't want to be gurus. Why? I think we are more informal. I think we are more casual. I think we are more approachable. And I feel that in that world, there was a little more distancing. There was a little more formality. There was a little more, aap guru ho, you are my guru, and therefore I will pay obeisance to you. Whereas today, I don't think people are in that kind of a relationship. Everybody is therefore either equal, or everybody is at various degrees of gurudom.
Now, let's talk about your industry, because, most of the people who may be watching may not understand the forces which are likely to revolutionize the industry that you are in. And you mentioned about fear as a motivator, right? And the feeling of fear will get aggravated if the threat perception is high due to the changes which are happening in the industry or in the field. Could you elaborate what are the big forces of change which you see in the next 3-5 year horizon, which can fundamentally change the industry that you are in?
Yes. First, just as an aside, which is, I made a movie recently called Neerja, and the tagline for the movie said, "Fear gave her courage." And I use that fear to give me courage. Right. And I find fear is a great motivator. There are two things that fear can do. It can either, make you somebody who says, "Oh, I don't want to get out there," or actually it's good fear. There's good fear and there's bad fear. So when I use the word fear, I also use it in its best sense. Having said that, I think one of the great things that is happening to this industry is what we are seeing with Netflix and Amazon Prime. Now, what is happening is purely from a return of investment, business kind of field. Today, if I want to make a film, let's say that costs 100 rupees, I have to get an actor that will allow me to fund that film. That actor is being judged by the last movie that he made, which earned that much.
Right.
That basically means that you're being judged by bums on seats. Okay. So how many bums on seats can this actor get? And therefore, we can get so much ticketing from that actor because of his past record. Therefore, you can afford to make a movie of this budget. Okay.
Right.
So therefore, budget is equal to bums on seats, is equal to how much the actor can get you those bums on seats, is equal to the ticket price. And therefore, you say for a 100 rupee movie, you need to recover, let's say 300 rupees. That's vaguely the way it works. And therefore, you need to sell so many tickets, and this actor has the power to get me those tickets. So that means that my entire business model is run on the two things. One is on the power of the actor's return of investment. So if I get the actor that I want, I can then get that kind of money. Or two, it is running on the Friday mafia. The mafia of the Friday, which is on Friday, if that actor crashes, then his next movie does not command. And if I'm suddenly in the midst of making that movie with that actor, and my movie is going to be next, suddenly I discover that maybe my funding has got reduced or whatever because of just what happened to this actor on that Friday. Or perhaps my own reputation on that Friday is entirely, my next movie is based on what I did on that Friday as a director. Thankfully, my last film was successful. And in fact, it is the largest, the return of investment this year. And it's also the largest grossing Hindi film, female film ever in the history of Indian cinema. So thankfully, I'm okay. That means I'm okay till next Friday. Okay, till my next film, when I release my film next Friday. Now, how do you get out of this business model? Because this business model doesn't make sense. Okay, it's running and it's a gamble and it's fine. Now what happens is, comes in Netflix and Amazon Prime and people like that, and they turn on and say, 600 rupees, not for one ticket, 600 rupees for a month. Now, suddenly, what happens is that you are now able to make the movie that you want, whether people see it or not. Hopefully they'll see it. But the return of investment for the company is not coming from that particular movie and that Friday and that actor. It's coming from 600 rupees over 5,000 films, over 100 million people. So 600 rupees at, even if you get 20 million people, suddenly you discover that the entire maths has changed. So what technology has done, and the root word of the word technos is actually comes from the Greek word art. Okay, and you will discover that technology changes art all the time. In the 1960s, we had something called cinema verite, which Godard and all that did, and it was because they were faster lenses. Okay, in the 1920s, it was because of sound. Now it is because of the digital revolution, in a way. So my entire industry is changing because of the viewing habit of the audience. That means that what I'm making can now not be limited by my return of investment based on price of ticket, based on bums and seats, based on return of, based on Friday Mafia. It's fantastic. It's fantastic. It means that now I can actually, and for an audience, it's great because you can seek out what you want to see. Of course, it's also going to change. Technology is going to change how the formatting of your frame goes. The frame was based on the movie screen, which is whatever that size of that movie screen was, whether it was 70 millimeter at a certain point, or whether it is 16 by 9 or CinemaScope or IMAX. Now your frame is actually, guess what, for the first time, it's vertical. Vertical. It's not even hot. It's like, okay, now you may have to, and soon we're going to be having vertical movies. movies shot vertically and not horizontally. Why are we shooting movies horizontally anymore? That the whole purpose of horizontal was because we are viewing it horizontally. You're now viewing it vertically. You're wasting screen space if you now, sort of view it any other way. So all kinds of fantastic things happening because of this one major. Studio systems are collapsing because of where digital sort of production and digital distribution more than anything else. Technology is allowing us distribution. I'm going to spend a minute on my favorite theory, which is where did this all start from? And everybody says, yes, I agree with you, it's a digital revolution. But where did the digital revolution actually, what enabled the digital revolution? How did we suddenly become so digitally, sort of in the midst of this sort of mutiny? And so I have a theory for this. So to my mind, the world's greatest invention, okay, I mean, of course you say the printing press, and of course you say the steam engine, and of course people are now saying the computer or the digital world and all the rest of that. But I have a different theory. I feel that the world's greatest invention was, believe it or not, the air conditioner. If the air conditioner was not invented, we would not have computers. We would not have flight. We would not have anything that we are seeing today. And of course, the greatest irony of the invention of the air conditioner is that the air conditioner shut us off from our outside world. When filmmakers like Satyajit Ray or Shyam Benegal, and when they were at their peak, their windows were open. You could hear the street, and therefore you were making films about society. When you were traveling in a car, your windows were not shut. Your windows were, you could smell, you could, everything was, and this is how we grew up ourselves. Slowly the air condition shut everything off. Okay, the noise is shut off, the smells, everything is shut off. And of course then the headphone, which was enabled also by air conditioning, shut us off further. And then, just when we thought that we are losing hope, and in cinema certainly, people are no longer making films about the outside world, they're making films about themselves, because everybody is becoming more and more inside of them, suddenly comes a revolution which now allows me to know what is happening outside my air-conditioned world. And that is really what we're seeing with social media, with what is happening on, that's the only way now that I can actually be in touch with what is happening outside. So on one hand, the air condition in some ways ruined us, and thank God for air conditioning, but on the other hand, it enabled so much of technology. Technology, computers, everything is because of climate control. If we had, if it was hot, then the computer would you would be putting that fan, and we know what happens to computers when it's not climate controlled. And so the thing that I found is that on one hand, air conditioning got us inside ourselves, and on the other hand, air conditioning allowed us now to be part of this social revolution, this digital revolution. So that's my little theory for you.
Very interesting. Because, another person who articulated about air conditioning is the founding Prime Minister of Singapore.
Oh, is that so? Okay.
And Lee Kuan Yew.
Yeah.
And he said that
I'm in good company.
The biggest productivity tool that the world has experienced
Absolutely.
is air conditioning.
Absolutely.
And so, I mean, you are in good company, and I'm sure he's not around anymore. But yeah. So, going forward, when you think of business heads of companies, or successful entrepreneurs who have built their success based on not so digital models, whether they come from creative field or IT or whichever industry, what would your advice be? How can they remain? What must they do? For a minute, I'm asking you to be a guru, right? What are the 2-3 things that you believe, based on your own experiences, you would advise them that they should use to reinvent themselves?
Whew. So I'll go to a favorite quote of mine actually, which is, if you don't know where you're going, all roads will take you there. So I think that as a director, what I try and tell myself, and I have no clue whether it's of any use to any other business or any other field, and I don't have that kind of sort of ego or certainly no arrogance about even telling people how to run theirs, but I'll tell you how I'm trying to see how I can run mine, and in doing that maybe so I think that there are 4 things that I try and do. One is vision, because my job is to have a vision and pass it on. If I don't have a vision, then I'm not doing my job. I mean, the whole purpose of a director is direction. I have to show them the direction, where to go, okay? So, one is vision, the other is power. You can have vision, but if you don't have power within your own corporation, then that vision is of no use. Then there is control. That power gets you control. And so a lot of my time right now is spent not in doing the work, because I think the doing of the work is I can do it, it's not a problem. But can I actually get these 4 things going? It's certainly the first 3, vision, power, control. If I don't get vision, power, control, then it doesn't make sense for me to execute. And I think a lot of the time, it takes me much longer to work out my contracts than it takes me to work out my scripts. What I'd say to everybody who's out there running a company, make sure that in your contract you do have power and control, because without that, it's pointless having vision and execution.
You came out with a digital movie called Let's Talk in 2002, and then you brought it back into 35mm.
Yes, I shot it on digital. It was an English indie kind of movie, and it was the first time that had sort of happened in India, and I think it's the first time, maybe I'm wrong. I decided to shoot it on digital because I felt that what has happened is that we need to embrace the digital eye. There is we have got, like, there is a certain 35mm cinema kind of eye that we've got used to seeing, whereas the digital eye, I think, makes things real. Whereas sometimes, I'm not saying all the time, but sometimes the 35mm image, not that it's got to do with the technology, it's the way that people are using that image, sort of beautifies things and makes it a little like photographic. Nice photography here, okay. It looks great, okay. Whereas a lot of what you're seeing, how do you capture that truth? And I'm now sort of, this is going to take a 2-minute answer, okay, so please, I'm sorry this was a little complicated, okay, so in the midst of everything that I was going through at that time was also something that I call as cultural colonization, and I'm extremely worried about cultural colonization because I feel that I have been culturally colonized myself. We've all been culturally colonized, where we've got further and further away from our roots, and we've got colonized by whether it's rock and roll music or whether it's jeans or whatever it is, okay? And I think that the British came and took our land, and the Americans came and took our mind. And so while I was sort of looking at this and I was trying to figure out how do I get to something which is how do I do it with a ras? How do I get to the rasa theory, which is really it's called sentiment. It's like what is the rasa theory tells you that it's not what you are going through, it's what the audience feels. And therefore, as people who are in the business of communication in some ways, and all social and digital technology is part of that communication. It's not the message that is being sent, but it's the message that is being received. And that is really communication, which is not message sent, but message received. Now, in that therefore, how do you send that message so that it gets received well, was everything that I was going through at that time. And I said, I want to try and see how I can be more honest. How do I be more truthful? How do I be more real? And I began to therefore look at what is the best way to capture that truth and to capture that reality. And I found that that technology of a digital camera, it was small, it was friendly, I didn't need lights, it was unobtrusive, and therefore it led to a revolution in a way, certainly in a lot of lives in mine, where I was able to get out there and make what I wanted without for attendance and a big camera and all the rest of that. Sadly, what has happened post then is that a lot of people did not move to that kind of format, okay, professionally. So then the digital cameras, the guys who were making the digital cameras said, 1 minute, this means that the cameramen, so to say, want big cameras. They wanted to feel like it's 35 millimeter. They wanted to look like it's 35 millimeter. And that entire revolution was then sat upon by people who are not willing to change. And this is one of the greatest problems of anything that we are facing, which is that there is a bunch of people out there who are controlling this, who are not willing to change. And there is a bunch of people down there who are forcing that revolution. Okay, so now we have the 5D, okay, and everybody's shooting in 5D, but you're shooting it as an interview, you're not shooting feature films on it yet. And I went out there and I shot it on this technology because I felt that this technology is what is freeing us. And, but it wasn't accepted, okay. Now you'll see most people are not shooting on this when they're shooting advertising, they're shooting feature film, they're shooting on that. The technology is the same, but they want this. They want it to feel like as if it is a 35 millimeter camera. It's so shocking how we have to adapt. Technology is actually far ahead of where we want it to go. Okay, and our biggest challenge is, are we going to accept that technology or not? That's our greatest challenge. It's not technology. Technology is moving like flying, and we are like sort of saying, keeping up with it and always keeping pace with it. And in some ways, we are bringing it down. And therefore, I feel that technology is perfectly fine. It's us who are having a problem.
We had somewhat of a similar experience because there is something called digital pen, right?
Yes.
And most of the insurance salespeople, they do this kitchen top selling, right?
Yes.
And you sit across the table in the kitchen,
Right.
talking to the client.
Right.
And they are struggling with the concept of not using a pen to capture what the client wants.
Right.
Whereas the technology has moved on, you don't need a digital pen.
Right.
But
well, you do need it, I suppose, because it'll help production and systems. It'll help systems because it's already there, you know.
Yeah, I understand. But what I'm saying is that that does not create any legal document because the legal document comes later, right? So,
I'm facing the same thing when, like, for instance, I made the first commercial for Kindle, for Amazon Kindle here in India. And of course, everybody said, but do you use the Kindle? And I'm a great book reader. And I said, yes, I'm embracing the Kindle because, you need the paper. I said, excuse me, when the printing press came out, did you say you want to read on stone? Is that what you said then? No, we can't have paper because I'd rather read on stone. What is wrong with you guys? It's just another technology that is actually enabling you to do, it's like doing a zoom lens. Or it's like VR, it's okay, it's just another technology. It's not here to, where, I'm only going to read on, and then they look down upon, which is the most amazing thing. which is that there are people out there who are snobbish that you're using Kindle. So it's a reverse snobbery. It's not that you are at the forefront of technology. I mean, obviously using a Kindle is not at the forefront of technology anymore, but I'm saying at that time and when I first started, sort of using it, everybody said, no, how can you, you have to... I said, but you should be, I should be there saying you should move to paper, but they're saying no. The smell of the book, and I said, but this is great because it allows me to use whatever font I want and whatever size I want, and I can thousands of books, and this is fantastic because I don't need to now, sort of worry about what are the 3 books I'm going to carry for my holiday. But so it's that inverse snobbery of people who are unwilling to change, who are then looking at you with their nose up in the air saying that, oh, actually, this is that guy who does that. And I found also a lot of that happening during Let's Talk when I was doing digital. And they said, so what happens is the people who are at the forefront, you're in good company, but a majority of people are not at that forefront and they look down upon that. And so we are finding that a lot, which is this being part of the receiving end, or the what I would call as the tyranny of what is the word for that now? The tyranny of like the old, the tyranny of the old, because it's not.
Gap or something like
yeah, because it's not something which is they come at you with a judgment. And you have to, and I'm hoping like hell that at some point I don't become that, where I say, nahi yaar, video games, no yaar, I hope I don't become that.
So, Ram, I'm just wondering, would you be open to me having a quick fire round where I say a word, whatever comes to your mind?
Okay.
Go
ahead. Go ahead. I hope this is of some use. I hope it's
absolutely. And and as I mentioned, it is giving a very different perspective,
right,
and refreshing perspective as well. Because when you think in different ways,
right,
it stretches your mind to beyond the norm.
right,
and you start becoming open to learning new things, I guess. So that to that extent, this is very, very good. So, shall we start?
Go ahead.
Okay.
I'm scared.
Technology.
Art.
Awards.
Very important.
Success.
Gets you to do what you want to do.
Failure.
If it's part of the job, you have to get out there and be ready to face that. I mean, you're not going to be successful all the time. It's not possible.
Right.
Embrace failure.
Embrace
failure.
Right. Celebrate failure in some
Celebrate failure. Because that's the only way that you're going to get out there and do what you got to do.
Right.
Yeah.
Ego.
I like the word ego because I try and bring it with a duality, which is a humble ego. I think an ego is important, but I think humility is also important. I'm going to spend a minute telling you another story, sure, which is not part of rapid fire.
Sure.
Okay. I'm going to get to a transformation that I had and an epiphany that I had some years ago, because I used to be terribly arrogant. And everybody is at a certain time of their age till you're beaten into humility, okay? So I had won my Cannes Award, and and it was, and so these friends from this advertising agency called me and said, "Hey, we want to give you, a copy of the Cannes Award, and please come to the office. But at the same time, we want to talk to you because we feel that you're being a little too arrogant. We think that your ego has got a little too much." And so I wasn't looking forward to that meeting but they're friends, and I've been working with them, and this was the Cannes that I was getting, and they'll give me a copy of it and all the rest then. So I was looking forward to it, and there's a place over here at Kemp's Corner where the crossword bookshop is there, and that's where the agency used to be. And it's got the flyover, and I was walking to the office on the pavement. And suddenly I was walking there into their office, and on the pavement, there's a lady who was, she was a beggar lady, and she had this, sort of short black hair, and she had this slightly grimy face, and she was wearing these dirty khaki clothes, and she came running at me while I was walking on that pavement. And as she came running at me, of course, I said, who's this person who's running at me? And in a situation like this, therefore, you sort of, say, oh, don't meet eyes, just like ignore and like continue, okay? And then just before, like she got to me, she bent down, there was a fallen branch of a tree, and she picks it up and she hits me very hard, okay? And she hits me on my head, and I move my hand and my shoulder, and to block it out of pure reflex, because otherwise it would have hit me like straight on my head. So I move my hand, and then she throws the stick. It hurts really bad, so she throws the stick and she runs away. So in a situation like this, of course, because it's so embarrassing, what does one do except behave that it hasn't happened? Okay, no, this did not happen. Okay, but meanwhile, of course, my eyes are smarting, and I'm sort of my eyes are downcast also, and I'm like sort of so embarrassed, and I'm looking at everybody, and there's some drivers below the bridge who are parked over there, etc., and they're all sort of laughing at me, saying, okay. And I then like sort of walk into the agency that my friends are actually going to be giving me a beating. And I go to the bathroom, I wash my face, and I say, my gosh, what just happened to me? And then, of course, I go and meet my friends, and they say, hey, listen, you're just, being too egoistical, and, this. But anyway, this is the cards, and we just want to tell you that if you continue in the way that you're continuing, and you need to be more collaborative and teamwork, and, all the rest of that, and, So this incident keeps playing on my head for about 6 months, and I'm thinking, at that particular moment, when I'm going to get in a way, a dressing down from my friends about being too egoistical, why did this lady come and hit me? Was she a client that perhaps I had, sort of not listened to? Was it a creative director? Was it a copywriter? What is the message over here that God has now sent me? Okay, and I realized that the message was, if you're not going to be humble, we will hit you. It was a lesson in humility. This is the stick, okay? And if you're going to be arrogant, then that stick is going to come and hit you. And then over time, it began to come to me extremely clearly that what does humility mean? What does ego mean? Where does arrogance come from? Of course, arrogance is important, because if you're not going to be, in a way, egoistical, you're not going to be able to tell people where you want to go. And so this is where I've now come to, which is I'm now humbly arrogant.
So, a couple of
yes.
rapid fire beyond youth.
Well, all elusive.
Digital natives.
I want to be part of that.
Bollywood.
Exploitative.
And last but not least, can you share with us what keeps you going? Beyond what you said, the fear.
Yeah, what keeps me going?
Has been.
Apart from that, what keeps me going? Like I was saying, that I'm on the train of life, and the destination, I thought that this train was cinema. Okay, I thought I had boarded the train of cinema, and that was enough. Okay, and we're lucky, some of us are lucky to have boarded the right train with the right co-passengers on that train. And I thought that was great, and then I realized that it's not really about whether you're on that train of cinema, but the thing that train is getting you to is not success, or of course getting to the audience and of course telling stories, but like I was saying, it's getting you to self-discovery. And I think that your entire purpose of life is to try and get to know like why you're here and why you do what you do. And I think that a lot of the time that seems so much in the distance for so many of us. I will one day figure that out. And I think so much of that journey is actually trying to figure out what is the distance between this and this, between your head and your heart. And so I'm here to try and narrow that gap. I think that one of the greatest things that has happened in the East is I find that the West tells you, I think, therefore I am, which is the quote, I think from Descartes, okay, which is, I think, therefore I am. But the East says, don't think. Now, in terms of just and how not to think, and I think, therefore, I'm trying very hard to see how I can get from a Western upbringing in a way, and in a way a Western education, to bringing it back to what the whole purpose of what the East tells you and what India tells you. And so my journey is really to try and see how I can move from here and get to here, and get to here.
Very nice.
And to get to the gut.
Very thought-provoking. And
right.
you know, this session certainly is triggering lots of thoughts in my mind
right.
as to what I should be doing going back. So thank you so much.
No, thank you so much. It's been very nice, talking to you, and thank you for, sort of, I think this is something that I'm going to have to do myself, and go and get out there and meet other people and see, how to learn from them. So thank you.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Right.